Miguel Merlin is a third-year student at Stevens Institute of Technology studying computer science and mathematics. He is VP of Technology at Stevens Blueprint, a quantitative researcher at Stevens Student Managed Investment Fund, and a 2 times ex-Amazon software engineering intern.
Ivan Farfan Diaz is a third-year student at Stevens Institute of Technology, studying software engineering. He is a VP of Technology at Blueprint and a software developer and mentor at the Stevens Entrepreneurship Program, Launchpad, and a teaching assistant for programming and algorithmic thinking at Stevens.
Their past experiences, paired with their natural ability to teach and cultivate talent from the people around them, makes the two of them the perfect first guests for our podcast. It is truly a special skill of theirs, and we will absolutely be returning to it among many other topics during session 1, our first session of Hello, Zidanni, Emilio, and World.
Hi, I'm Zidanni.
I'm Emilio.
And you are World.
We hope you enjoy our conversation. With all these new, like agents coming out, right? Like, I'm sure you've heard of like Claude 3.7 just released, and Cursor's becoming increasingly popular. And so agentic coding, and I guess this is like a term, I'm not sure if you hear this term, and Zidanni actually told me about this. It's called like vibe coding.
It got really popular on X recently. Somebody like literally just coined the term like a few weeks ago. It's called the vibe coding.
Yeah, so I'll definitely show you like the article after this, but like also on Reddit, it's very popular in a lot of like the agentic coding, I guess like circles or forums or whatever. But basically the idea is like you just work really, really hard on the prompt. And there's like 4 sections for prompting. I forget like, I guess that's off the top of my head what they are, but the idea is that you make like 4 separate files. In these files, you put information about exactly what you want on your app or your site or whatever. And then you just basically just keep plugging and chugging into Cursor until you get what you want. I want to know, like, first off, what do you think of this? Like, just, not even technical opinion, but like, what do you think of the idea that anyone can make anything nowadays? Like, we're kind of in an age where an idea, there's no point of just having an idea and thinking about something when you can actually do it. You know what I mean? You can make a prototype in seconds, like, or an MVP in maybe a few hours. So what do you guys think about that?
Oh, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think it really resembles the spirit of hackathons to some extent, where like if you have an idea, you could build it, right? But I do want to emphasize that I think at the end of the day, like all of these agents are just tools for us. And I think we have to really be clear about that with everyone that uses those tools. So in my opinion, we still have to understand these systems, and like the experience I have like coding software with like these tools has been positive in some, like to some extent. But something I've always discussed is that if the code that the LLM outputs is wrong, there's no way to build on top of it. Like you have to start over. So what I used it is for like very specific things where I don't really know how to do something, and then I ask the LLM how to do it and like give examples. But I try to really go away from asking it to build like the full app.
Yeah, for like full stack development, basically.
Yeah. Like I'm not saying it's like for someone who doesn't know how to code, I think it's definitely a great tool.
Yeah.
As long as you're making sure that whatever the LM is outputting, you understand what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's where the biggest problem is, and that was the problem for me too. When I first started, like first started programming, and I wanted to make my own whatever, like just basic app, like it could be arbitrary app. Like I think you don't understand anything at all, and you're literally just copy and pasting, stuff, or just inline code completion, like the whole thing. And now that I know a little bit more, at least how a program's supposed to be designed, and like what your end goal is, I realized like, wow, that's like this thing makes a lot of mistakes that aren't very proper, and like you need to know at least a little bit going in. But do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing for beginner programmers in particular? Like,
oh, I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
As long as you have the right mentality, right?
Yeah.
But coming back to your question, being able to prototype and iterate quickly on like an idea that you have, and just maybe test if what you had in mind could work.
Yeah.
That's something great. And I think that leads to like kind of innovation, especially for like non-technical people. But I do think that somewhere along the line, you're going to have to learn how things work.
Well, I mean, using or like doing vibe coding or using agentic AI to code your software, your apps, isn't really a beginner thing anymore. Recently, Y Combinator Startup Accelerator, they made a post on social media saying that 25% of their spring 2025 batch made 95% of their app using AI. And I just want to ask you, what do you think of primarily using software like Cursor and Claude in like the professional like industry? What do you think of people that do that? Do you think at that point when you're already in the industry, rapidly iterating and developing is more important than understandability?
Well, I guess if you're already in industry, you have like a solid foundation, and I really hope for that. But I think especially when it comes to like software at scale, that's where AI is lacking, for a lack of a better word. And you really have to be like I personally wouldn't trust the AWS accounts that I manage to an LLM. Uh, like there has to be a point where you start making the technical decisions of your company or your product, and you stop offloading those decisions to an LLM. Uh, so I do think that what you mentioned of like iterating quickly, it's important. Uh, and that's great for a startup.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know many startups don't do like robust testing, which is fine because you don't even know if your product is going to work.
Yeah, you just want to make it and get it out like,
Exactly.
very, very, very quickly.
So for that stage is great. Like what you mentioned of Y Combinator, if you're like quickly iterating through like multiple uh phases of your product, that's great. Like I'm fully
Yeah, in support of that.
supportive of that. Yeah, but when it comes to like actual software at scale or something more critical, like for example, if AWS goes down, like 60% of the websites or whatever services that AWS supports go down as well, right? So you really need to be careful in those scenarios to make sure that whatever changes you're pushing work.
Yeah.
So I guess to just like reiterate what you said, as you leave development and start to move to production environments, you should definitely be relying on AI less and less
Oh
because
yes.
these are where all the important technical decisions are made, and you can't just leave that to an LLM.
Yeah, and I think so. I like to think of LLMs as just like a compilation of human knowledge, right? So the way like these big companies create those LLMs is they just scrape information from the internet. So you have the knowledge of humanity like, at the tip of your keyboard. uh, but when it comes to creating new stuff, I think that's where our creativity has to come in. And a great way to use these tools is how have people solved this problem in the past and how the way they solve it fits into my problem. So I think for those use cases, it's a great tool. But then again, if I'm building an app that has like thousands of concurrent users, then I wouldn't just be pushing the code that the element gives me, right?
I think like the main message, I guess, is like, and I feel that I realized this too once I started to see basically push its limits. Is like, yeah, it's not ready to be scaled to, like a real, I guess you could say like a very large scale, company or like app or website or anything like that. Yeah, it's just not ready. But I'm actually like really excited to see if it will ever reach that point where it can work with a huge code base and like be able to, pull correctly from different files and work like well with dependencies and stuff like that.
Yeah, but then again, to learn how something works is great because it gives you examples and you can put it in the context of the thing you're working on right now.
I guess by extension, this question goes out to both of you. Do you think there will ever be a point where AI themselves are building their own startups, building an entire business or company from the ground up, from the idea to the execution to the marketing? What do you think?
AI themselves, even like an AI building a company from the ground up, or someone using AI to build a company.
Let's go with both, but more emphasis on the
Well, the first
latter.
one, I see it really difficult. As Miguel said, the whole focus of our previous conversation was, I think AI is a tool, and it is a product of human innovation and ingenuity, and it will keep being that way. I think there's a whole paranoia nowadays, especially among students, that AI is going to replace us, that it's the end of coding, all of this. I think AI will remain a tool that, yes, will improve how we learn, especially. Not only coding, in all different classes and content and stuff in general. I was talking to someone the other day who is in contact with middle school back home in Colombia. And she told me that they are prohibiting students from using AI because they're relying on it too much to basic math. And that is a big problem because, you can get away with using AI in those moments, but what if you get to college with that kind of just relying on ChatGPT or Claude or whatever AI can be now? So I think just relying on AI to build a business, to take all of the business decisions, it's not the way to go. It's then again a tool that we gotta use to help us improve. And I think the best analogy that I can compare this to is a car. So back in the early 20th century, with the appearance of motor vehicles, people were scared. Back home in Colombia, the first car reached our ports, we had a war started, the 1,000-day war. And people started blaming cars for the appearance of the war because people are very, scared of technological advancement and innovation. And I think it's happening the same thing. But nowadays you see cars everywhere and it's a tool, and it didn't replace horses, did it? So to some regard it did, but horses are still out there. Yeah. So I think it will be the same thing with AI. They'll help us grow these businesses. They'll help us make stuff. They'll help us learn, but it will not replace the whole process of human innovation and creativity.
Yeah, that's a great point. And lately I've been really interested in I would say this is a little bit what led to my interest, but really like Google DeepMind. And a big thing that I think their next goal is to try to basically, and this is a very, I guess, common thing in computer science in general, but to basically build like AGI, a model that's essentially, absolute and can do everything that you just said, like have its own intuition and basically not be so much a tool, but actually like an absolute like model.
Artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, artificial general intelligence. So this is more of just like, not really a technical question, but like, do you guys think that would ever be possible? And if so, like, is it good? Like, is it cool, or is it, bad for us, basically?
Actually, where the official name of my team at Amazon was AGI.
Oh, there you
That's
go.
funny.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I would say no.
Yeah.
Like coming back to Zidanni's question of like, will AIs ever create their own startup? We have to think of where does these ideas come from? Like, if you want to build a product, you want to build a startup, it's because you want to solve a problem. And the way I see, or I've read that people encounter these problems is either by personal experience. So if you had a really bad experience with something, then maybe you want to build something to improve that. And I don't think that like AIs have the capacity to experience, and if we ever get to that point, then I think we will have bigger problems than them creating startups.
Well, what do you think of agents that could, let's say, scrape through Reddit to discover pain points?
I think that's a good question. it would be more of a question of the to what extent can an LLM synthesize the problems of someone in Reddit, and to what extent is it accurate? Because I think Reddit is a bit biased also. So your sources of information matter a lot. But then again, you would be using LLMs as a tool, right? So I think there will always have to be someone behind them instructing them on what to do, rather than themselves thinking, okay, I need to build a startup. So yeah, like coming back to the question, I would say no. Just the AGI.
Yeah, just because of like reason, like, like purpose, like, and it has no, I guess, purpose, like you said, from a problem to do something, and that's really what, like, I guess, drives a lot of the more successful startups and stuff like they see today. They have a purpose because of a problem that they have. So yeah, that's a good point. What do you think about?
Well, I think it's especially interesting what you just asked, Zidanni, and that is the an AI scraping Reddit to find problems. That would be terrible. Reddit is not a good source of information, and it happened to Google last year. I don't know if you guys remember that around May of last year. They came out with the AI integration in the search bar of Google, and there was this person that had asked this AI agent, this AI integration, how to fix the tackiness of the cheese in pizza. The response of the Google AI there was to add non-toxic glue to fix that. So everyone was wondering, like, where did this come from? Why is this agent spitting out this information that does not make any sense and it's actually dangerous? Well, they found a Reddit comment that was intended as a joke from 11 years ago. That said that in order to fix the tackiness of cheese in pizza, you will have to add non-toxic glue. So I got picked up by the AI and it was spitting out that information. So I don't think it's possible. Like, first of all, we would have to control what sources of information are we using. And I think even for us humans to understand each other, it's a big challenge.
I think it goes back to like the explainability problem I was talking about. Like, okay, we have this like black box that output it. You have to put non-toxic glue in your pizza, but
That's crazy.
like if we had some like methods of more easily finding out why this happened, that would be like a great advancement.
Yeah,
for sure.
So, I guess to reference like your specific work at Amazon, because I did like read up on it a little bit. I thought it was really interesting. You worked a lot with Alexa and specifically integrating LLMs into Alexa.
Yep.
Before, I guess, because like I have one in my house, like my mom has one. So I guess before, like, what did they use? Because obviously it wasn't an LLM. Like, and then now, how did you work on integrating it so that it now is, backed by AI and uses like language models?
Yeah. So actually, what I worked on recently got released. It's Alexa Plus. I don't know if you've heard about it.
Oh no.
But it's like integrating like LLM into Alexa, and it was definitely like a hard challenge. It the main problems that we were trying to solve is, okay, like we have this like LLM that will have a better interaction with the users that like any other model that we can come up with will ever do. So our main engineering challenge was, how can we, LLMs are trained up to a certain cutoff date, right? So if you ask Alexa, what's the weather? Like, Alexa wouldn't know the weather, and you kind of need a way to interface the LLM with an API, so that the LLM, there's just like this whole research where this kind of relates to what you were asking about, like if LLMs will ever do a startup, but you can prompt the LLM to create a plan to solve a problem, right? So for the case where the utterance of the user was, what's the weather in Hoboken? You can prompt the LLM to spit out a plan, and be like, okay, the user wants this, sort of like how chain of thought works currently. And just one of these steps would be to make an API call to our weather service to get that information. But then again, it also boils down to how can we make the LLM spit out the output that we're expecting, right? It's either to be like a JSON for the body of the request or like certain format that we're expecting. So a lot of research had to go into enabling that. And that's sort of what my team was working on when I was there. And then 2 years ago, the landscape was like completely different.
Yeah.
I think ChatGPT had recently just came out, like the semester before I entered there for my first time. And it was all like statistical models. There wasn't like really any like LLM integration at all.
So did Alexa just used to use like a web search? Like if you ask, what's the weather tomorrow or what's the weather today, it would just use a web search. Like it would, just it would literally search it in like, I'm imagining like a Google search bar and just say, like display that information.
Not really. So we still needed a way to match your request with, like in this case, our weather service. So we would have an API that would spit out the weather. And what my team used to do is you tell Alexa play music or whatever. What's the weather in Hoboken?
Yeah, like add something to my grocery list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we would need to connect your request or your intent with a corresponding API. And those were like statistical models.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you pulling from like thousands and thousands of sources, or like how is it working? How are the requests being kind of handled in the back end? Like,
I don't know. I'm not sure if I really can dive deep into how.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But like just like the general overview, like we would get your request, and then we would have a model that would kind of try to gauge your intent, as if you wanted to play music, or if you want to get the weather, or if you want to like a fact, like if you ask who's the president of the US or something like that.
Yeah.
And we would then reroute your request to the appropriate service. And then they would try to respond to the request as best as they could. So that's what our model was, like the central hub where all the requests would come in, and it would distribute them accordingly to whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah. On a scale, like, was it like thousands or like, I'm trying to imagine it. Like, so yeah, like you said, it's like a hub basically. And then you have all these different pathways to different, I guess sites, services, things like that. So is there like hundreds of these, thousands, tens of thousands?
I think hundreds, if I'm not wrong. Like I don't have the exact
figure.
But definitely hundreds. And I saw that in the product they just released, they have like a Graph Hub integration as well. So you have to enable all of that, right?
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess other than what you two both do individually, we're both aware that you two are working on your own project together through the Launchpad program at our school. I was wondering, or we were both wondering, if you go a little bit into more of that. What is the problem you're trying to solve, and why do you think it's important?
Yeah, we recently pivoted, but I think I have my kid.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's see it.
Well, we come back to my experience. So I'm very involved in 3D modeling, especially back in the day. Something that you realize while working in 3D modeling, especially for game studios and for all of these game development projects, is that 3D modeling has to quirks or feature. It requires a large team, and it's very time consuming. And that leads to other problems, like your team burning out because they're overworked and they have to, do a repetitive task for hours and hours and hours and hours, and it becomes very tiresome. So our intention with the project that we're making is to automate this process and help these game modelers to make their job easier and faster. This is a big, challenging game development because I don't know if you guys play video, but if you go to any video game community, every time a game is plans an update and it doesn't come out the specified day, people lose their mind.
Yeah.
And it is as simple as that.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's something that people deeply care about. and they get offended when they don't have that something that they're expecting so badly.
Yeah, and games cost so much nowadays too. I remember a few years ago when Cyberpunk came out, like people were so upset because it was supposed to be like, like really this massive, huge open world like experience, especially it's going to be multiplayer as well, and like people were, yeah, like you said, like outraged. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, to continue to your point.
Yeah, so that's a big challenge. Now, the question is, how do you solve this? When I first started working on this individually, later Miguel joined, the approach that was out there was to generate 3D models from images or text. Basically, there was this model called a nerf that depended on many pictures to create a 3D output of that input set of images. Then last year, or in 2023, I don't remember correctly, I have to fact check.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you on that. Was Gaussian splatting, which basically works with also input images that create a 3D representation. No, not a 3D representation, but a representation of that set of images in a 3D space that are represented by splats. So it's basically kind of think about it like a plane that contains some kind of information, visual information that is, but it doesn't have any 3D data. So it doesn't have a surface. And the challenge of Gaussian splatting is how do you convert those splats to 3D? And that's the first approach, basically replace a 3D modeler, get him to generate the 3D models you need for your game directly from text for images. Or what we're trying to do right now, which is create kind of a GitHub Copilot integration for all of these tools that are out there, call it Autodesk Maya, Blender, so that they can generate this stuff faster and soon.
Oh, wow.
So like a one-stop shop for 3D modeling and game development.
I guess we're thinking of, like Copilot when you're like start writing
Mhm.
like out of
Yeah, like
your-
inline
Mhm.
completion.
out of completion. Yeah, we're thinking of something similar. So I guess like generating 3D models from like a prompt or an
Mhm.
image has like many problems. That I discussed with Ivan was like the outputted 3D model. Same thing with like LLMs is if it gets it wrong, like you lost your time. Like there's no way to fix it. So you basically better off just starting from scratch. So that's why we decided to like pivot the way we help the end users, which in our case would be the 3D modelers. And there are like many repetitive tasks, and our main hypothesis is that we can teach an reinforcement learning agent or some other type of like deep learning architecture. We can teach them or teach it those patterns so that when you're like 3D modeling, you can get like a predicted next best graph of your current 3D object. And same way that in Copilot, we expect that for repetitive tasks, at least it will help you iterate faster.
Okay, so I'm trying to visualize this.
Yeah.
It would be Copilot for 3D modeling.
Yes.
So how would it do this like auto-complete feature in terms of
The thing to understand how it will work, you have to understand first how 3D modeling works.
Mhm.
So in 3D modeling, there's two paradigms in which we have CAD modeling and non-CAD modeling. Main difference is that in CAD modeling, it's using professional environments. Like think about it like Boeing design a plane. They need the specific measurements. They need their stuff to be perfect because lives are dependent on it. In non-CAD modeling, you don't care about that precision so much because you're exporting that to a video game or you're making a movie out of that. So you don't really care about that precision, and you can kind of have more freedom when it comes to creating these 3D models. Therefore, it's much more flexible how you create models in non-CAD modeling. An example of this, Blender. How do you create a car? That is mainly what I used to do back in the day. You start with a vertex. Let's imagine you want to create the hood of a car. You start with a vertex and you start drawing a set of vertices that you join through edges to create the shape of the hood and the lines that make up that hood. And then you create faces with those set of edges. And as Miguel said, it's a repetitive process. So you can repeat this pattern over and over and over again for each part of the car. And that's how you make it out. So what we want to do is make this process of drawing edges and vertices much more simpler, because we have the prediction there. When you 3D model a car, you're really dependent on a blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
So those lines are already there. You're seeing them. It's just missing the implementation, whether it's a human drawing those vertices and making up the model, or in this case, an agent predicting those and optimizing the process.
So does that start with, like you said, does that start? It's difficult to do in natural language. So does that start with, doing it one time and then having it sort of extrapolated over the rest of the, like in your example, the hood of a car? Or what does that look like for you? What's like your, I guess, base like goal that you're trying to achieve in terms of, like how you're able to replicate it?
Well, I don't understand your question.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. So I'm thinking of it like this, right? Like you said, it's a really difficult issue, or a really difficult problem that you can't just use natural language to make a model. So I'm thinking, what is the minimum amount you can do that, the model will get or the language model will get what you're trying to do and then create it for you, or, finish, fill in the patterns that you don't have to do.
Well, I think only if we can get a model to predict like a basic wireframe of the lines of a car and then get that filled by a human manually is a big optimization step. Why? Creating a car in 3D model in Blender takes the average modeler between 7 to 10 hours. And most of the time is consumed in creating and drawing all these vertices, making sure that it aligns, that it looks well. We also have a problem in 3D modeling, which is called topology, and that's how you organize your faces, and that affects how it looks because it's the shading and all this. So just optimizing this process, this repetition of creating vertices and edges, that will be great. And I think that will be our first point where we're like, okay, we have created something new here. Let's test it out. Let's get it out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So,
And I guess like coming back to why like deep learning models fail to accurately represent these 3D models. It's so you can think of it as if we have more vertices in our graph, we can represent more nuances in the shape of the object, right? So for example, if you only had, I'm talking about in a 2D plane, if you only have 4 vertices, you can only represent a square or variations of a square. But if you start adding more vertices and more edges and more faces, you can have like a more nuanced representation of the 3D model. And these deep learning architectures or these deep learning models fail to get the nuance of the shape of an object. So they're misrepresenting the object by not including as many vertices as a normal developer would.
Is it that it's very rigid? So it's just like not as many as you said, right? So does that make it like a lot of things that you can create seem very rigid? I'm imagining like very straight lines, not very
exactly
things.
Or like the wheel of a car, maybe it's represented as a square.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm imagining.
Yeah.
It's hard to model like the curvature of a car and things like that. Okay, so your goal would basically be to like
it's more focused on the actual 3D modeler itself rather than being able to generate the 3D model from like an image or from like a prompt. And we've noticed that that's a market that no one has been tackling until now. So the focus like in academia has always been, okay, let's generate the 3D model from scratch. And that's what the like main hypothesis of NERSC came from. Like given just like a set of images around that 3D object, how can we represent it in like a 3D model space? And like this field has been active for a long time. Like, I don't know, Google has like active research on this for their maps. So if you, I don't know, this is like only available in some few cities, but you can see like the 3D model of the city.
In Manhattan,
Yeah.
you can do that. Yeah.
And then also like when you're like on Google Maps, you have like the height of the city as well for certain maps.
Yeah.
So this is like a really big field, and like we know that no one's like helping the developers themselves, the modelers, I should say.
That's really awesome.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I really hope you guys make some like, big strides towards actually doing it.
Yeah,
So I'm just imagining all of the implications of that. Like even maybe this is a little bit too far ahead. Maybe even in like holographics and stuff like that. Like, I mean, holograms and stuff like that. Because you basically just like trying to, build models from nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
I've definitely like heard like from I've also friends who are also like 3D modelers and game developers. 3D modeling is a task on itself. It's very tedious,
Yes.
and you're often doing the same things multiple times. And leveraging like machine learning and AI to automate these extremely tedious processes is a trend that I'm noticing, not in just like your company or Launchpad itself, but in just like the startup space in general.
Yes.
They're using AI to replace mid-level roles. And I was wondering, I guess, does that something like that actually scare you?
But then again, I think like we come to like the nuances of your role as a developer. Like if you understand the system as a whole and how maybe the service that you're particularly working on fits in the whole picture of the product that you're building, I think that's like an invaluable insight and perspective that maybe the AIs or AI agents don't have. And it also comes or boils down to it's not only about building the product, it's about having the capacity and resources to maintain it. So if we let just AIs build our products and our software, and I hope not, but something wrong happens with the service, like it crashes or there's like a bug in there, you need to have the understanding to go into the code and be able to see why something's going wrong. And that's our main job as software engineers, to like have a full understanding of the system so that if it fails, we can fix it. And then it also comes down to maintainability. Maybe there's like a very specific solution that the AI came up with, but that's not maintainable at all. Like from the point of view of developers. So there's like a lot of like moving parts when it comes to developing good software that from my experience working with LLMs, they don't currently have. So it's more like on the long term, how are we going to maintain this and how are we going to manage this? It's something that I don't think LLMs currently have figured out yet.
And I guess one final question about your your startup. Do you guys have a name for
We do. Vertex.
Vertex?
Yes. It's a basic unit of a 3D model. So I was just saying. So from a vertex, you can make an edge, and from an edge, you make a face. From several collection of faces, you make a 3D model. So we wanted to evocate that spirit of 3D modeling and go back to the basics for our name.
That's good to hear.
Great. Sorry guys, and I just need my head second. I don't know. It's like not picking up audio. Yeah, that's really cool. Oh yeah. Okay. It should be good. I think the last like few minutes got caught only on this one though, so it might be a little deaf. Yeah. I think we're good again though. Yeah. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah. So, do you have you want to ask me another question? I have some more questions. I definitely want to ask you guys before we finish, but
I guess my final question for you two is, since you're both like non-native to the US, do you think the United States or / Stevens is a good place to create your own things and be business owners and run your own startups as compared to doing it in your home country?
For me, it's a resounding yes. Like I feel like Stevens has given me a lot of opportunities that I might have not been able to pursue back home. Um, and one of them, it's definitely Launchpad. Like all the networking and resources that Launchpad has given me are like invaluable for me. Like just the meeting we had with the BC manager a couple weeks ago, it's like I would have never had this opportunity back home, and just getting her insights on what BCs are looking for in companies, it's something that it's very valuable. And it's something that you cannot get anywhere. So that program, also internships. I feel like internships are not prevalent back in Mexico, or at least not when I was back in high school. Uh, like it's, I think that's like a very US thing, or like not Mexico thing, I guess. Uh, yeah, like if you actually think about it, as a freshman when I started working at Amazon, I would have never had the experience of working with like a multi concurrent service back at home. And just like that responsibility and that level of like technical expertise around Amazon, it's something that as a freshman I would have never gotten in Mexico. So those kind of opportunities are like the staple of being here in the US, and that's what I'm so grateful of being here.
So,
Well, what can I say? Stevens is a great place.
yeah.
Stevens is the college that we go to.
Yes. Launchpad, best program here in the school, I would say. Absolutely beautiful. The network of support, the kind of people that you get to know is simply amazing. Also, all the opportunities as well. How you have a network of alumni, investors, and all of these people interested just on like you succeeding. I think that's great. When it comes to the US, I think it's the best place to grow a company. You also have a network of support. Y Combinator is here. All of the BC companies that are here in the United States. That's also great. And you feel the spirit of competition, the spirit of going out there and making your own stuff. But I think when it comes to Latin America, in my case, well, in both of our cases, is that it is also a big opportunity, and especially will be in the future because tech and the internet is growing back home. It's growing in the sense that 10 years ago in Colombia, we had an internet penetration of around 48%. Nowadays, it's at 79. In Brazil, they have made a payment system, that uses phones and technology, and they basically rely on that system nowadays. Now, no cash at all. We have unicorns as well, Platzi, Rappi, all of these companies that are also backed by these American VCs. So I think Latin America will be an interesting development in upcoming years because there will be a lot of growth, there will be a lot of opportunities, and there's a lot of founders that have a different perspective when it comes here to the US. Because the problems uh, in the global south, I must say, are very different to the ones that are in developing countries.
It's a great point. Yeah, I think I've even seen that a lot of the production of like really big car companies and a lot of tech companies have actually moved to Mexico as well, which is like really interesting, I think. And yeah, I think the trend will follow soon in Latin America.
Yes.
And so my final question, I think, is like, which I think we already kind of got into, talking about agents and AI, like, which is basically the body of our talk. Like, what do you guys think is, next for technology, for you and your careers in general? What do you think we can expect to see in the next 6 months?
I think right now we're in a period of hyper competition where it feels like the space race, back in the Cold War, where someone comes up with something and then the other side has to come up with something much and much better. And I think we had this moment of realization with DeepSeek, where these guys in China created a model that was better than the standard that we have here in the United States, with less money, with less resources. it was fantastic. So we're in this period of hyper competition where I think the main benefits of that will be users themselves and humanity as a whole, because we'll get better products and better innovation in a short time. I think it will slow down eventually. And that's when we'll know that we have reached the top when it comes to AI. And we'll shift our focus to another things. Maybe it won't be LLMs, but something on what we're working, like 3D modeling or like optimizing these tedious and repetitive process as well that are probably out there. Like, I don't know it all, of course, but I'm pretty sure there are a lot of problems that can be solved with AI. So I think that'll be the future, a future of hyper competition that eventually will slow down. But by the time we reach that level, we'll have a lot of innovations and we'll have a lot of problems and pain solved in the world.
I fully disagree with that. I think that like LLMs themselves have reached a plateau, and how much better can they get? Like if a good example would be like, what AI tools do you guys use besides Claude?
Yeah. So like, okay, for me, so I'll actually I agree with you actually. So this is gonna be like pretty interesting. But for me right now, it feels like sort of like you said, everyone it feels like it's kind of playing like a game of chicken. Like you have someone come out with something, it's big, and then someone takes it, makes it like so much better, and then comes another one. I think the best example of that, yeah, maybe DeepSeek. I think Claude 3.7 is really, really impressive. Like Zidanni also, and I also talked about this, but on Twitter, like this guy, I think what's his name, like Levels.io or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, this really popular guy on like Twitter who basically made like this flight simulator game, like all using Claude 3.7 and Cursor. So just crazy stuff like that. Really impresses me. But in terms of what I use like Vercel VO. I use Cursor. I haven't really tried out Claude yet, but like and then Gemini. But yeah,
I just feel like, doing assignments. I mean, doing, doing things like in general.
Yeah.
I could see where you're coming from with your hyper competition point. Because everybody is using multiple LMs. Nobody's just sticking to one single one. They're always comparing answers between what does GPT say, what does Gemini say, and that's what I see with like my classmates, and it's what I see with my friends. They're always, they're not sticking to one. Right?
Yeah, like it's almost like it's almost like an AI like workflow is emerging. Like you have people who start in, let's say like Gemini or like ChatGPT to actually engineer the prompts, and then they'll put it into VO to actually like get the the front end and like a little bit of the like JavaScript I guess like functionality, and then into Cursor to like develop more if you're gonna do like a database or if you're gonna like develop a little bit more of the backend functionality. So you see like almost like a full AI workflow, I think emerging, which is driving a lot of the like competition, like you said. That's why I agree with you. But I want to hear what you have to say.
I guess like my question was more towards, let's say you're not a student and you're not like a software engineer or a CS major. In what ways has AI revolutionized your life?
Well,
I mean, we're all students, and
other than like the bad, like homework or like,
I guess that's my point. Like,
yeah,
like LLMs find that they're like an object of innovation that, props to OpenAI and all of these companies. But I do think that a better LLM won't be useful for us as humanity. And I'm actually glad that maybe we've reached a point of plateau, because now we can actually start focusing on the use cases of this great invention.
Yeah.
And one of those, I know it's like a startup in France that, yeah, they're like summarizing, they might be like a startup here in the US that's doing the same, but they're summarizing if you go to see the doctor, or for nurses, they're summarizing, like the interaction with the patient, because most of their administrative work of doctors is like writing what happened during the patient visit and talking to insurance companies, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's why I forgot the name.
Yeah. So stuff like that. I'm so excited to see what people come up with that are solving those problems using AI.
Yeah.
A few years ago, they used to call those like apps that leveraged like existing LLMs. They used to call them ChatGPT wrappers.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's the future.
Yeah.
It's using AI and applying them to very specific niches and use cases, which is going to be the future of startups and businesses in the future.
Yes.
It's going to be like the bulk of it and what people are going to try to do.
You made me like really think about like as developers are really useful to us, but like actually as a normal person, how is it impacting my life? Probably not at all. To be honest.
Generate a workout routine.
Yeah. It's really not where it should be at writing. Like it's pretty easy to tell someone wrote something with a language model. So yeah, that's a really good point you made.
Yeah,
Unless you're a developer.
I think that's where the future is going, and I'm super happy that that's the case. Like as I mentioned before, a better LLM, how is it impacting our day-to-day lives, right? Maybe it will, dude, this is something bad, but maybe it will help you write a better homework.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I would feel disappointed if that's the ultimate goals of LLMs.
It's really good at homework. Really
Yeah.
good.
What should the ultimate goal be? AGI?
That's I think that's like a very philosophical question. Yeah. I think right now LLMs are a tool for mainly developers and maybe like some other type of technical people. But it hasn't reached the common person yet. And I think that's where like startup and innovations have to come in and say, okay, there's this problem and it makes sense to solve it with LLMs or AI. Because there's also like in the past 2 years or past year, there's like, they're doing it the other way around where they say, okay, we have this great tool that can basically do multiple things and then try to find a problem for it. And I don't think that's like the right way of like approaching a business. It's rather, okay, we have a problem. Does it make sense to solve it with AI? And if the answer is yes, then I'm so excited to see what people come up with.
Yeah, I think the best analogy for this was a Swiss Army knife. I'm sure you guys heard it from like somebody before, but you can't present a solution to a problem. You have to have the problem first. It has to be tangible. You have to find product market fit for it, and you have to verify an audience basically. And if you're just showing them this, oh look at this, it could do this, and it could do this, your audience kind of just gets lost.
Right. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
And then,
sorry, can you unplug the mic? Plug back in again.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we gotta work on that. Yeah, it keeps like busy.
Keeps us safe.
My bad. Let's try them. Yeah, it says connected. Maybe try talking.
Oh, yes. Is it working now?
No. Here, let me try plugging plug back in. Thank you guys. Oh yeah, there you go. Okay.
So it's about like really questioning and asking yourself, okay, I have this problem, right? Does it make sense to solve with AI as well? Right? Because if not, it becomes like a vanity project where you want to go for the most complex solution, but maybe that's not what the user needed at the end of the day. It's just like a Aken's racers problem here, where we might be looking for the most complex, but that's not what I need as the end user.
Yeah, I was actually talking to him. I watched a video from Anthropic last night, and they like said the exact same thing. Like, because agents are very trendy right now, and like everyone's trying to integrate AI into their app, and like oftentimes I feel it's it's like either redundant or it's just not needed at all. Like you said, like,
Exactly.
Like it's just like why? Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a great point.
It's something that happens with every bubble.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where the AI wrapper came in. Like people started just like putting AI into like everything they could think of, and they never stopped to actually think, okay, is this what the user needs? Like what actual advantage is using LLMs bring into the problem. So that's my take on.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, I want to hear what you have to say, and then hear about it.
No, I agree, and as I said, it won't only extend to LLMs, but all kind of like models. Just yesterday, I saw a tweet of someone posting or featuring an OCR model that it's like very impressive. You can convert a picture to a PDF document, and it's like you had just taken a photocopy of it.
Yeah, wait. Sorry, bro. Let this to me the last time. Just take this mic. Yeah, I think it's just like the wires.
All right.
So yeah, you guys just.
Yes. So as I was saying, I think there's, as Miguel said, I agree. We're kind of missing the use cases, and I think that's a problem not only in AI but in software in general. Where like you as a software developer, or maybe from a business perspective as well, you're trying to solve a pain that you think people might have, but in reality they don't. I think one of the most popular cases is Google Plus. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was Google's attempt to create a social media in the times of Twitter and Facebook. It failed. It only lasted 3 years, and no one used it. It was very complex to use. No one understood the need of that. But Google engineers and Google business analysts were convinced that people needed a new social media, when in reality they weren't. And I think we're in that era of AI. And that's, I'm going to extend my definition of hyper competition to these companies that are using AI too, in which we're in an era that if you're not using AI, you're behind and you're seen as a business that is outdated. So I think we're in that moment and stuff might change. We'll see what the future brings us.
Yeah, I'm honestly really, really interested to see because like you said, like companies that don't use AI, I feel like now seem like primitive almost in a way. Like it seems like weird when companies don't use AI, which is weird to say. I think next it will definitely hit more like commercial, like very like unneeded things. Like I think eventually you'll go on like Grubhub and you'll be like have to use AI for like for something like yeah, it's gonna get to that point where it's like, oh, AI, like your top picks on Grubhub, like this is what you should order. Like so yeah, I think
Or also like the customer service, where you're gonna have to talk to an AI agent, and I'm like,
yeah.
dude, like I need to solve my problem. I
Yeah.
need to talk to someone.
Yeah,
Like
It's a AI in like business is definitely like a double-edged sword because it's
for sure.
become the standard now. Are you guys like? Do you guys remember Chegg?
Yeah.
And how they like it went down. Now they're like rebranding. If you go on like YouTube, you'll see ads. They always start with "We're not just AI." So I don't know. It's just something that's very interesting to me. How it's always like a comparison with what you're doing versus what AI is doing.
Yeah. And it's also like a buzzword. I feel like it's going there.
Yeah.
Because Emilio mentioned, like, if you're not using AI, then you're behind. But does your product really need AI?
I'm telling you, man, give it a few months and then you're gonna see Grubhub AI. You're gonna see like DoorDash AI, like all that.
You don't have to go. You don't have to go that far. Like you see it everywhere nowadays.
Of course, you don't have to.
One of my best friends, she's a journalism major, and she got like kind of a gig job last summer, in which she was working with like not a news studio, but like they make some kind of reports on situations back in Colombia, and they use ChatGPT for everything. I was like, wow, that's kind of concerning, like imagine our journalism, the protector of democracy, being guarded by an LLM. It's kind of scary to think about. And they don't even use the pro version. They use the free version, which is even worse. But anyway, yeah, I think we're seeing it everywhere. And going back to what you just said, like, what's the need of using AI in journalism? And not only that, journalists nowadays, and I see this especially back in Colombian media, they use AI to create their contents. But not like, hey, create an article about this, but like they ask about GPT about what are the best things to do in 2025 to have a good year. And they write an article about what ChatGPT says. And, that's the content that they produce. And ironically, that's what people are reading, because they don't tell you, oh, we asked ChatGPT this, but they use these euphemisms and kind of interesting titles that are very attractive to people, saying we ask the artificial intelligence what the future will become of people in 2025 or something along those lines. So people are clicking on that instead of real news, which then again, it's very concerning and very scary in my opinion.
I've noticed that, and this is a common thing actually too. I think again, I saw this on like Twitter or Reddit or somewhere like that, which at least is bad, but like it's real people at least saying this. Like people are like, yeah, Google searches like suck nowadays. Like they're really bad. Like because you get a lot of these articles that you could tell are written by AI, like the ones you said, and they don't tell you. But like if you're a human, and especially us, we're students, so we're using these types of tools a lot. You can easily tell that like this is not written by a human, even though it doesn't clarify that anywhere. It's just like just the way the flow and just the comment indicators. Yeah.
And also, I feel like for non-technical people, if you see ChatGPT, you're like, wow, like this is amazing. And it becomes like this kind of like super or like supernatural phenomenon where I've seen people like ask ChatGPT how to write an email. Like people are becoming very dependent on it, and I don't think that's like a good thing either. So definitely like, having like better understanding like as a whole, like in society, of what AI and how it works and like its trade-off or why it might be biased, stuff like that. Like teaching that stuff, it's very important.
Yeah. So I mean, in a way, I guess you could say our conversation sort of says like this is just all of reason to learn about computer science, like learn about math, because once you understand those types of things, you become less reliant on things like ChatGPT, and I feel like you really learn how to like search for information yourself. At least that's honestly what I've kind of taken from this last semester, and even now every day I feel like I'm learning more and more about technology, how to use it properly, and why things like this aren't perfect. Because like you said, from the outside, it's easy to say, wow, this is a magical tool, like this is amazing. Then you realize like, yeah, it's just scraping through the internet. Maybe someone thinks that it's like actually generating original content, because they don't disclose that. Like no one really knows unless you study it like us. So.
And another huge takeaway that we could get from this conversation is not to get FOMO with AI, especially when building startups. You don't just slap AI onto what you want to do. It's more of, can AI solve our problem? Is this a tool that we could use to generate a solution to this real problem that real people have?
And that it makes sense to use AI. Like I saw one of the startups in the new YC batch was sort of like the same thing as Copilot, but for Word documents.
Oh yes.
So that was like a really interesting use case where I'm like, I'm surprised no one thought of this before. And I think that tells you a lot about what people in the AI space are mainly focused on. And it's like developer code. So I think we have to like expand our horizons and see how can we apply this like amazing tool to other fields. For sure.
I mean, that's the same reaction I had when you guys explained your startup. I was thought, why did no one think of this before? Like this seems like a really large problem. And yeah, that's just to your point. Like there's so much to be discovered and like, done with AI. So yeah, that's where the hopeful part of the, I guess we just talk really bad about it. That's where the hopeful like part for AI, I guess, comes in the future.
All right. Yeah, I guess time to wrap it up.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having us. It was a great conversation.
Yeah. You guys had fun.
Thanks so much.
My hands, it's so hot. My hands.
You're good.
Thank you.